Thank you very much. I also like to start my talk thanking ARGENCON for inviting me to this fantastic journey, particularly the Council and Susan and Randy for hosting us, and the audience, you for being here, and the webcast audience for being with us. My presentation is going to focus on three main parts. First, just a flash on long-term Argentina economic growth. Second, some trends related to the knowledge-intensive sector growth in Argentina. And third, an explanation of what I think is the key determinant factor, which is labor quality, or the human factor. And then we will conclude in a way looking forward. So first, the first slide, this is probably the more complicated. This is the long-term evolution of GDP, 100 years of long-term evolution of GDP of Argentina and other countries in relation to US per capita income per capita, as a proportion of US income per capita. The countries here examined are Australia, which is the first one. This is Argentina. This is Spain, and this is Brazil. If you look to Australia and Argentina, you will see a common feature, no? Just those two to make it fast. But it's a deterioration in income per capita, long-term deterioration in the second half of the 20th century. That's because of deteriorating in terms of trade. But you see that Argentina's decline is when Australia stabilizes, we continue declining. And this is because of the breakdown of democracy. Then with return of democracy, there are two temporary recoveries, the mid-1980s and the 90s, with the crisis in 2001, 2002, and afterwards is a sustained recovery. Also, you see in Australia sustained recovery, and you see in Brazil sustained recovery, the reverse, of course, in Spain. Why? Well, first factor, terms of trade. There's been a tremendous improvement in terms of trade for natural resource-rich countries like Argentina, Australia, Brazil. It's been, here you see, the increase has been 38%. Okay, great, you're right, thank you. The increase 38%. Although there is a moderation in the increase of international commodity prices, we're not yet confronting headwinds. We're still with some tailwinds. The second factor in the window of opportunity is the demographic bonus. We're not confronting an aging problem. Argentina still has a very young population. Like you will see, like China is entering the aging phase in 2025, Argentina 2035, Brazil 2035. But also Argentina, the dependency rate of elder population, Argentina enters later in this phase, much later than Brazil, much later than many other Latin American countries. The third factor that is helping us in the window of opportunity is global trends. Among the global trends, I'm not going to show the numbers, but one very good global trend is the growth of emerging markets, and particularly the growth of the neighborhood. The neighborhood is a very important market for Argentina. But there is another global trend that is very important today for what this analysis we're doing here, which is the global trend in the growth of knowledge services. They came to represent, it came to represent 40% of global trade from 34% in 2003. And they have been growing faster than total service trade. Basically what this is reflecting is that the movement we first experienced in global value chains in manufactured products is now a movement in the global value chains of high knowledge-intensive service products. So there is global value chains, and we are benefiting from that. So the sector success story we're examining here is not only because of the efforts and the talent in Argentina, but there is a global trend that is favoring us. And particularly IBM, I think, expresses very well this global term. IBM has been, it's not the only, but IBM has been more than 90 years in Argentina. In the 1980s, inserted Argentina into global manufacturing trend with the printers doing all the metal work in Argentina for the world. And in 2001, so before the crisis, or the year the crisis really started to appear, inserted Argentina in the service sector. What is the trend of the sector growth in Argentina? First is a growth propelled by exports. Exports have been increasing at 20% annual average, have reached, like we saw in the video, $6.5 billion in 2013. And if we look also at the increase of employment in ARGENCON enterprises, it's been 50% annual average per year. And there is also a trend towards increasing productivity of exports, that is dollars exported per person employed, which is showing an increasing complexity in exports exported from Argentina in this sector, and also a movement up in the value chain. Just to put it very graphically, India, which is a main player in this industry, India is factory. Argentina is studio innovation, boutique innovation, high value added services, complexity. Again, as in the global trend, the share of this sector in global service exports went from 23% in 2003 to 45% now because of faster growth. And when you look at subsector export growth, the rates are very significant. BPO and legal and advisory, it's over 26%. I'm not finding the light, but IT is over 25%, advertising is over 26%, media, again, is over 20%, audiovisual is 12%, but some of audiovisual is being counted also in media. And R&D, Argentina didn't export R&D services, and now we're exporting over $400 million of R&D services from Argentina. And that's also a very important trend. The software industry, I'm not going to go into detail in this, but just for you to have the numbers, is of course a very important sector, and with very important rates of employment and export growth. Domestic market growth, if you look at quarterly figures in 2014, have slowed down basically because of inflation, because of economic uncertainty, and because of slowing down of GDP growth in Argentina. What are the key factors? This is a Deloitte survey made to 277 firms around the world, most of them multinational firms. Sorry, I'm going to put it here. And what is important, these firms bill a total of between $1 billion and $15 billion each. Okay, between $1 billion and $15 billion each. And the survey shows that the main determinant factor for locating shared service centers in the world, which is not only buying from knowledge-intensive service from abroad, but actually investing in the development of these services, is labor quality. Of course, it's not the only one. Labor cost also, labor availability, language skills, proximity, which is proximity is not only distance, it's time zone, and cultural empathy, and all the policy and institutional factor. Argentina fares very well in labor quality. We're going to focus on that. In labor availability, in labor cost, in a world where labor cost right now, we're changing the model from input-based pricing to output-based pricing, to cost effectiveness. So in a world where value creation is very important, we're not just looking at input costs, but what is the output of labor, the cost effectiveness. So in that world, we're still very competitive on unit cost at highly qualified labor regarding our immediate competitors in the region, Brazil and Chile, but also in that way. And we're in the same time zone. Cultural empathy is a strong factor of Argentina. The weak factor and the challenge, one of the challenges is the policy environment, but the expectations are next year we have the 8th presidential election after democracy, that there is going to be, at least market expectations are showing that, there's going to be a positive change in the investment environment and integration of Argentina into the world markets, not only trade, but also financial. Well, let's focus on the labor factor. First, labor quality, education. Argentina has a very high tertiary enrollment rate, the highest in Latin America, very comparable to the one in Europe, higher than some countries in Europe, higher than Spain, about the same level than Italy, if you look at UN indicators. And this has been a very important equalizing factor historically in Argentina. Argentina has had and still has one of the best distribution of income. I think after Uruguay, probably Uruguay is doing better. Uruguay also has a very high education comparable to Argentina levels. And this is this is a very important factor. Availability, we have about 1,800,000 students, university students in Argentina. And if we look at those specifically related to this sector, we have 500,000 students in basic and applied science and 270,000 students in engineering schools in Argentina. If we want to see how do we rank in the world in terms of education as a driver of innovation, I chose to show, then you can look at the details later, the Global Innovation Index, because it's sponsored by very prestigious institutions, Cornell University, INSEAD, which is the French and Swiss administration school, business management school, WIPO, which is a World Intellectual Property Organization of the United Nations, and also the Economist Intelligence Unit. If you look at middle-income countries, you can have the presentation afterwards, but Argentina is the second. Argentina is here, is a second top best performer among middle-income countries in terms of quality of innovation or education as a driver of innovation after China. China is in a best position. This index ranks 143 countries. Globally in the index, we are in number 70, and the weakness in Argentina is on the institutions factor on the innovation input. The index is a mix of innovation input, innovation output, and efficiency, relationship between output and input. Argentina does well in output and efficiency. In the input, it doesn't do very well on the institutional, which is something we think that in the medium term it's going to improve. Creativity. This is a very interesting report. This is the GAN report. It's done in England. It ranks countries because of their on the basis of international awards in media, TV, and cinema, publishing, and gun blazing. Argentina is among the 5 most awarded countries, or in the top 10 during the last 15 years. You see which are the most awarded countries. First is always the US. Second is the UK. Third sometimes has been Argentina. Other times has been Germany. And you can see what has been the performance in the last, sorry, the chart is missing, but if the performance in the last 5 years will show that in 2008, 2009, Argentina was 3rd, 2010, and Argentina was 4th, 2011, 4th, 2012, I think we were 6th, and 2013, we were not in the chart, we're finishing. Well, quality of innovation, Argentina also is number 36. We have a vibrant entrepreneurship community. Here are 2 examples, Globant and Mercado Libre, but they're not the only one. We also have ASA, who is an Argentine multinational in the software industry. We have Satellogic that is producing satellites, technology, innovation in product. The Mercado Libre and Globant and ASA is more innovation in operational processes. And now Technicis. So there are many examples of successful entrepreneurial ventures in Argentina. This shows the quotation in NASDAQ. I chose only the last 3 months because it thinks Globan is quoted in NASDAQ, but you see that the average increase, is much higher than for NASDAQ and Dow, both for Mercado Libre, which is 48% the last 3 months, the market value, and Globan almost 15%. Well, the location attractiveness. This is first step in terms of looking forward. We are going to be optimistic if the region in which we are is attractive for this kind of industry. This is again the 2013 Deloitte survey. 29% of respondents among 277 firms that own about 900 shared service location centers said that the most interesting region is Latin America, 29%. Asia Pacific is 19%, India is about 8%, so if you add Asia Pacific and India, it's lower than Latin America. Brazil, of course, is the most interesting country, with 11% of the respondents saying that they want to invest in shared service centers, global shared service centers. But interesting enough, Brazil's market is served 48% domestically, and then Argentina is the second supplier to that market with 12%, and then comes the United States. So in order to conclude, basically there is a revival of demand that's particularly from the US that is explaining the growth of these industries in global trade. Second, the vision, what is the vision? That Argentina can be established as a hub, regional and then global hub for knowledge-intensive service industries and innovation. Third, there are some interesting projections made by ARGENCON that they can achieve if the sector growth is maintained, particularly export demand growth. They can achieve another $100,000 million exports in the next 5 to 10 years. And this will add another 115,000 jobs. What is the challenge? First, like I said, is policy and institutional. Basically, the main challenge is aligning this vision between the private sector and the public sector, national and local governments. There are some local governments that are already making progress. I should say the city of Buenos Aires is making progress, very important progress in this regard, and some other provinces also in Argentina. And the long-term challenge is really the sustainability of talent. With this, we're finishing. What follows now, we're going to learn from specific cases. The cases of corporate innovation, from the cases of innovative entrepreneurs, many talent stories that are putting Argentina into the global map, that are taking Argentina beyond the border, that are all helping transform Argentina into a knowledge-based, more diversified economy. They speak about themselves, and particularly they give foundation to our optimistic outlook about global service delivery capabilities of Argentina.